Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Technical difficulty, but welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. Right over here beside me is Sharon Letts. Hi, Sharon. Sharon's our guest tonight. Local writer, activist. We'll be talking to her. Next to me is Casper Leach, that wild and crazy guy. Gosh, what's he doing? And then over, you never know what that guy's doing. Over in the wings is John Cornett, ready to play some exciting music for us. How you doing, John?
Great, I'm here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Don't you appreciate it? I know I do. We've got a great, kind of lengthy hemp news segment for you tonight. Lots of good videos, so stay tuned as we bring on our, well, we aren't going to bring anything on, right? We're going to bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
Yeah!
Feel the force.
From Israel, the administration of cannabinoids, THC and CBD, limit cancer activity in neuroblastoma cells in culture and in animals, according to preclinical data published in the journal Current Oncology. Neuroblastoma is an aggressive form of childhood cancer that often goes inadequately addressed by conventional treatment. Investigators reported that both types of cannabinoids reduced neuroblastoma cell viability, but that CBD demonstrated superior anti-cancer ability. The study is the first to document the anti-cancer properties of CBD in this particular cancerous cell line. They concluded, quote, "Our findings about the activity of CBD in neuroblastoma support and extend previous findings about the anti-tumor activities of CBD in other tumors and suggest that cannabis extracts enriched in CBD and not in THC could be suitable for development of novel non-psychotropic therapeutic strategies in neuroblastoma," end quote. Preclinical data dating back over 4 decades has consistently documented the ability of various cannabinoids to halt the spread of cancerous cells in laboratory settings. In 2011, the website for the U.S. National Cancer Institute, cancer.gov, acknowledged the anti-cancer properties of cannabinoids, posting cannabinoids appear to kill tumor cells but do not affect their non-transformed counterparts and may even protect them from cell death. In the practice of integrative oncology, the healthcare provider may recommend medicinal cannabis not only for symptom management, but also for its possible direct anti-tumor effect, end quote. That language, however, was removed from cancer.gov's website after a little over a week. This study, in vitro and in vivo efficacy of non-psychoactive cannabidiol in neuroblastoma, appears in this month's issue of Current Oncology. In yet another huge victory for marijuana reform, the United States Senate Appropriations Committee on yesterday, voted by 21-8 to approve an amendment offered by Maryland Democratic Senator Barbara Mikulski to protect state medical marijuana laws from federal interference by the Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration. Marijuana reforms are repeatedly winning votes in Congress. Letting states set their own marijuana policies is now a mainstream bipartisan issue. After decades of inactivity on marijuana reform, Congress has moved at lightning pace to advance marijuana reforms in recent years. Last week, the Senate Appropriations Committee voted to allow Veterans Administration doctors to recommend marijuana. The committee approved similar amendments last year, as well as an amendment to allow state legalized businesses to access banks and other financial services. The Mikulski amendment is expected to pass the full Senate as well as the House. Similar amendments were passed in Congress last year and the year before and have led to several landmark judicial rulings, including throwing out federal cases against the Marin Medical Marijuana Alliance. Currently, 24 states, the District of Columbia, and Guam have legalized marijuana for a variety of medicinal purposes. 4 states, Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, have legalized marijuana like alcohol. In 2016, voters in Arizona, California, Maine, Massachusetts, and Nevada are expected to decide on ballot initiatives on the question of legalizing marijuana for adult use. A slew of recent polls show that significant majorities of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans strongly believe that the decision on whether and how to regulate marijuana should be left up to the states. This is a very clear message, not just to federal law enforcement, but to state law enforcement as well. Here in Oregon, our Governor Kate Brown has signed several pieces of legislation into law, amending statewide regulations governing cannabis commerce. Last week, Brown signed emergency legislation House Bill 4094 to encourage financial institutions to engage in financial relationships with state-compliant marijuana businesses. The measure, quote, exempts financial institutions that provide financial services to state-approved marijuana-related businesses, researchers, and laboratories from any criminal laws of this state, end quote. Many financial institutions are reluctant to engage in relationships with marijuana-related businesses out of fear of federal sanctions. The governor also recently signed separate legislation, Senate Bill 1511, to permit adults to legally purchase cannabis-infused edible products, and House Bill 4014, which allows out-of-state residents to invest in Oregon marijuana-related businesses. In the United Nations, a letter advocating the end of prohibition of all drugs was signed by over 1,000 world leaders and celebrities. It was directed to UN leaders. However, the letter was seized from attendees entering the United Nations this week. On the opening day of the 2016 United Nations General Assembly Special Session, or UNGAS, on the world drug problem, 100 people gathered to hand UN Drug Summit attendees copies of a newsletter titled The Post-Prohibition Times. A printout of a letter to UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon urging him to set the date and the stage for real reform of global drug policy. UN security was apparently ordered to confiscate the letter, and attendees were ordered to hand over their copies upon entering the building. According to a number of participants in the UN special session, they were told that the document was not allowed in the building. According to Natalie Linda of the the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, she said, quote, as we were walking into the metal detectors right at the entrance, the security were confiscating the letter from people. I went back and asked the security guard why, and he said he'd gotten specific orders from the United Nations to specifically take this letter. He said he was just following orders. That's an extraordinarily and deeply disturbing response by UN officials. The pamphlet obviously presented no threat to security. All it threatened was the status quo in the global drug war. The unprecedented list of signatories included a range of people from United States Senators Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, and businessmen Warren Buffett, Richard Branson, Barry Diller, actors Michael Douglas and Jane Fonda, Super Bowl champion Tom Brady, and activists Jesse Jackson, Gloria Steinem, and Michelle Alexander, as well as distinguished legislators, cabinet ministers, and former UN officials. It's alarming that the United Nations would have so little regard for freedom of speech and opted to disrupt this important message from getting to its intended audience, which is the delegates participating in this historic discussion. People from across the globe have had their lives destroyed by the horrors of the drug war. The world is watching, and it's a shame for the United Nations to stifle an urgent intervention into the debate. The UN special session took place from April 19th to the 21st, just yesterday, and was the first of its kind since 1998, when the UN's illusory but official slogan was, "A drug-free world, we can do it," end quote. They haven't tried to wipe out coffee yet. The upcoming UNGAS was proposed in 2012 by the Mexican government with strong support from other Latin American governments. Last year, UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon issued a strong call to action urging governments to conduct a wide-ranging and open debate that considers all the options. The public letter to him was prompted in part by the obstacles to such debate within the confines of the United Nations. The letter reads, in part, the drug control regime that emerged during the last century has proven disastrous for global health, security, and human rights. Focused overwhelmingly on criminalization and punishment, it created a vast illicit market that has enriched criminal organizations, corrupted governments, triggered explosive violence, distorted economic markets, and undermined basic moral values. Humankind cannot afford a 21st century drug policy as ineffective and counterproductive as the last centuries. In order to achieve meaningful reform to global drug policy, the UN and member states must address the contradiction between the restrictions imposed by the international narcotics conventions and treaties and the necessity of governments and societies to regulate these drugs. Several countries and some U.S. states are exploring regulation in a more humane and evidence-based manner. These approaches should be encouraged despite the restrictive language of the UN drug conventions. It's vital that the tensions between the letter of the conventions and the ongoing initiatives on the ground in the United States and Uruguay are resolved. There will be another international opportunity to do this in 2019 when the UN plan of action that calls for a drug-free world will be reviewed. The Global Commission urges governments and civil societies to continue moving forward and adopting drug policy reforms that are tailored to meet people's needs. We encourage and support them in their effort to fundamentally realign drug policy. According to several of the commissioners, including entrepreneur and global commissioner Richard Branson of Virgin Records and so on, he said, UNGAS was flawed from the start. The process was a closed-door affair and excluded important voices from the UN and civil society. According to the former chairman of the United States Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, he said, quote, the criminalization of drugs has generated negative consequences for governments and communities around the world. Criminalization has unintentionally stimulated a massive illegal drug market that's corrupting public authorities globally. End quote. Former UN Commissioner for Human Rights, Global Commissioner Louise Albers, said criminal sanctions against drug users have proven irrational, ineffective, and harmful. It's high time to address, prevent, and treat drug abuse through proper regulation and not blind prohibition. The former president of Switzerland and chair of the Global Commission on Drug Policy, Ruth Dreyfus, said, quote, there's a profound contradiction between the imposition of prohibitionist approaches to drugs and evidence-based public health and social policies. The only way to resolve this tension is by modifying the international narcotics conventions and the national laws that inspired them. Finally, former Mexican President Ernesto Zedillo said, quote, the very bad news about UNGAS is that its official declaration reinforces the 1961, 1971, and 1988 conventions as the cornerstone of international drug control. The good news, however, is that many heads of state and government representatives declare the exact opposite during the conference. Instead of sticking to the status quo, they express their commitment to reforming domestic policies to better serve the interests of their people. If governments honor the commitment to a people-centered drug policy, we may finally envision a day when the wrong-headed, half-century-old policies emphasizing prohibition in law enforcement will be rightfully confined to the dustbin of history. And that was the words of former Mexican President Ernesto Zedillo. Up north, on Wednesday, the Canadian government announced that it will introduce legislation next year to decriminalize and legalize the sale of marijuana, making it the first G7 country to permit widespread cannabis use. Canada's Health Minister, Jane Philpott, made this announcement at a UN drug conference in New York. The legislation will fulfill Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's promise made last fall during his successful election campaign. Philpott said details of the legislation are being worked out, but she promised that the government will keep marijuana out of the hands of children and profits out of the hands of criminals. Unlike in the United States, where marijuana regulation is shared by states and the federal government, in Canada, the issue falls almost solely under federal jurisdiction. Marijuana use has been expanding since the year 2000, when a court ruling first allowed Canadians to possess and grow small amounts of marijuana for medicinal reasons. Full legalization will make cannabis available similar to alcohol, and so we hope the Canadians can do that. And on the other side of the United States, down in Mexico, legislatures there are taking steps to legalize medical marijuana and consider changes to the law to decriminalize possession of small amounts of marijuana. Mexico's current president, Enrique Pena Nieto, made the announcement at the UN Drug Policy Summit on Tuesday in New York. He said, quote, "As President of Mexico, in this special session, I give voice to those Mexican opinion leaders who express the need to update, within the confines of the law, the use of marijuana for medical and scientific purposes." The participants in the forums also spoke of the importance of increasing, in accordance with international standards, the amount of marijuana that can be considered for personal use, with the goal of decriminalizing the consumer's use of marijuana. In Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf signed legislation, Senate Bill 3, on Sunday, April 17th, to permit the manufacturing and use of medical marijuana products to qualified patients. Senate Bill 3 permits regulators to license up to 25 marijuana cultivators and processors and up to 150 dispensary locations to provide cannabis products to qualified patients who possess a recommendation from select physicians. Qualifying conditions include HIV, AIDS, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, nervous tissue damage to the spinal cord, epilepsy, inflammatory bowel disease, neuropathies, Huntington's disease, Crohn's disease, disorders, intractable seizures, glaucoma, and sickle cell anemia, among others. The measure does not permit the inhalation of herbal cannabis products. Rather, it limits dispensing of medical cannabis formulations to oils, pills, tinctures, liquids, and topical ointments. To date, only 2 other states, Minnesota and New York, impose similar restrictions regarding patients' use of herbal cannabis. Pennsylvania is the 24th state to permit the use of physician-recommended cannabis, and the state's medical marijuana program is expected to take between 18 and 24 months to become operational. That's the end of our Hemp News segment for tonight. We are going over to some music by Mr. John Cornett. Thanks for standing by, John.
Oh, you're welcome, Paul. Hey, I don't know if people know it or not, but the reason that the feds have been for so long and for so vehemently opposed to states' intention to legalize cannabis is because there's that drug policy in the UN says that no state shall ever make any laws respecting the use of marijuana, ever. So it didn't matter what the states wanted. The UN was not going to allow it. So we've been under their control. That's all. Been warped by the rain, driven by the snow, drunk and dirty, don't you know I'm still willing. Well, I was out on the road late last night, seeing my pretty Alice in every headline. Alice, Dallas Alice. And I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari, to Tehachapi to Tonopah, driven every kind of rig that's ever been made, driven the back road so I wouldn't get way. And if you give me weed, white sand wine, show me a sign, I'll be willing to be moving. Been kicked by the wind, robbed by the sleet, had my head stoved in, but I'm still on my feet and I'm still willing. Well, I smuggled some smokes and folks from Mexico got baked by the sun every time I go down to Mexico, but I'm still willing. And I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari, to Hatchapee to Tonopah, driven every kind of rig that's ever been made, driven the back roads so I wouldn't get way. And if you give me weed, white sand wine, show me a sign, I'll be willing to be moving. Thank you very much.
Cornette, that's great, John.
Thank you. Well, Little Feat did that. Little Feat wrote that song.
I was listening to that song on the radio on 420. Imagine that. Pretty popular there. Hey, welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for
Nice
coming
to
on.
be
This is
here.
Sharon Letts. Sharon, you've been writing for a lot of different publications, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
You want to talk about, you're here in
Yes.
Portland kind of doing a Portland tour?
I've been doing a road trip series for 3 years for Dope Magazine. I've covered 6 states. I'll be in
Dope Magazine?
defending our plant everywhere. We've launched in Portland.
Uh-huh.
That's a
Yes.
pretty strong
What is-
title, isn't it?
Yeah, defending our plant everywhere is the acronym.
All right.
All right.
You scared me there
So-
for a minute.
Launched in Portland. What does that mean?
Oh, well, you can get Dope Magazine in Portland area in Oregon.
So they're like giving it out
It's
freely?
a free
and
magazine.
I
yes.
see. I see.
So
I know
I-
I've seen it in the Seattle Hemp Fest, for instance.
Yes. So I travel around and I visit with people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And so
do
you've been
stories
doing that. What other
3
states have
years.
you visited?
I've covered California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado. I did Las Vegas last fall. That was really great. I'm in Detroit next week. I've done Mexico. I did Paris year before last. An American Stoner in Paris.
Do you
That was
speak
fun.
French?
I speak very bad French.
Ah, well, they
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
I
it's
understand
fine. It was
anyway.
fine. But yeah, no, but actually I started in television 10 years ago. Local Access is where I began in Southern California.
Uh-huh.
So this is kind of interesting.
That's
to
where
be
Casper started.
Exactly. Van Nuys, California.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I was Riverside County and self-cycled a gardening show.
So you know my friend Lanny Swerdlow down there.
Yes.
You know, Lanny Swerdlow started this TV show back in
I didn't realize
1996.
that.
He
Okay.
came up with the name Cannabis Common Sense. He came and said, you know, Paul, I'm already doing these 4 other cable access shows
Nice.
here in Portland. What's one more? Let's do a fish show. And that's how
Nice.
we started. And
Nice.
we did the first 3 years in his studio
Yeah.
before we moved
And
to.
now it's historic.
Now here we are.
Yeah.
But he came up with our name and the slogan and some other things. So he's quite active down there in Riverside.
Yes.
Did you work with him in
I
our
know of
THC
him. I've
clinics?
quoted him in many stories.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I know when we opened our THCF medical clinic there weren't any other clinics in that area. I
Oh,
had
yeah.
to go to
yeah.
LA
It's
for
still
that.
kind of slim pickings for safe access in SoCal.
I know
But I
that
believe that will change.
San Bernardino County has been almost as bad as Riverside, right?
Yes.
So I know you also have done work with Steve Elliott's Toke Signals.
That was a
at
long
times?
time ago. Yeah, I was in mainstream media when I was brought up to Humboldt County 9 years ago to produce a news show.
Uh-huh.
And then 4 years ago I presented with breast cancer. And because I was in Humboldt County, I was given the strong oil to take, and it put it into remission. It was lobular carcinoma. And so I immediately started pitching to my mainstream sources and platforms, which they weren't really interested. So then I started writing for High Times, and I wrote for Kush and Skunk and all kinds of magazines. And now I'm with Dope, and I cycle out my road trip series to Weed World UK for an international reach.
They're good.
And,
They've
yeah,
been
and
around a long time.
Yes, they're wonderful. And I also do all the celebrity covers for Dope. I've done a lot of celebrity covers
I
last year or
see.
so.
So how do you do a celebrity cover? What does that mean?
Well, because I used to be in mainstream television, I was a field and segment producer in Los Angeles when I was brought up to Humboldt County. So I already knew how to attach celebrities. There's a certain process you have to go through. So last year, my first celebrity cover was, well, actually my first, what I consider a celebrity cover was Rick Simpson. I put him on the cover last summer.
Ah.
And that was nice. And then I put Willie's on the cover right now. I did Willie. Last year I did Melissa Etheridge,
I
Tommy
grow for Willie.
Chong.
You know,
Pardon?
I'm Willie's grower here in the
Oh,
state of Oregon.
I think
I've
I
known-
knew that. I
I've
think
known
I
Willie
did
for
know
quite a
that.
while.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get to test the weed before he gives it to Willie.
Excellent
sure
job.
does.
Someone has to do it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so I keep busy.
That's good. You know, we take live phone calls here, so if someone out there wants to call in, they can call that number on your screen. It's 503-288-4442, and I am told we have a call standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty well. How are you?
Not very good. I found out recently that I have hepatitis C from years ago, and they're checking baby boomers now. And I quit drinking, and I quit smoking because I couldn't smoke in the facility, and I've got emphysema and cirrhosis of the liver too.
I see.
And I was wondering if Medicare and Medicaid will still pay for the medicine if you're clean, but if you have a medical marijuana license and eat cookies.
If your system's clean, they'll pay it.
I cannot answer that question specifically. I think it would depend on whoever your provider is for you. So you're talking about the treatments to cure hepatitis. They're
Right,
kind of
I
an
have
intense
to be clean
chemotherapy
for
regimen.
6 months before before Medicare and Medicaid will pay for the medicine, which is very expensive.
Right. You know,
If her system's clean, that's what matters. Whether she has a card or not does not matter.
yeah, they won't know whether you have a card or not unless you tell them. But,
So, and if
Yeah.
it's that important that you get your medication, which it certainly sounds like, it sounds like the sacrifice of not smoking it for 6 months is a small sacrifice for an extended period of life. So I would certainly encourage you to refrain from utilizing medicinal marijuana so that you can move forward with your doctor's suggested treatment. And then after you've done so with your treatment and gotten back to a stronger life, resume smoking your cannabis.
Okay, I think that's probably a good idea. I just thought I'd ask.
I hate to make that suggestion, but I certainly can tell you firsthand that it is better to be with the living than not. And every minute that you
Yeah.
can get is amazing. Seriously, it's amazing. And if you
Yeah,
can get
I'm
an
the
extra
only
3
member of
months from
my
not
family
smoking
left,
marijuana, put the
so
pipe
I
down.
agree.
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks for
Okay.
your call. I'm sorry
Thank
about
you.
your condition, but hopefully you'll get those medicines to help. So if you have a question or comment for us tonight, you can call us at that number that just popped on your screen, 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. Now, Sharon, I'm not going to blame you or something, but you know, the word dope has always kind of had this negative connotation. Like,
I get that.
that's why they call it dope. Now, I
get
know a
that.
lot of people today, it's kind of the opposite. It's the way the word bad has become good.
Right.
Yo,
And the
that's
way
dope.
That's dope.
It's like
right.
cool. We say cool. It's dope. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from the 70s, so yeah,
Uh-huh.
the word dope kind of threw me a bit when I first started writing for them. But the thing for me personally with this particular magazine is they've allowed me. I'm from the 70s. I'm from mainstream media. I write in AP style. They've allowed me to keep my voice. And some of the weed magazines I initially wrote for, they would change my voice because their demographic tends to go 15 to 35 or something. So, but I
see.
write intelligently on cannabis as medicine, so my voice has a certain place. And when I'm allowed to write the way I need to, it's a good thing. So aside from the title, I mean, I do like the acronym, Defending Our Plant Everywhere. It works for me.
Oh, I didn't get that was
But-
an acronym until
Yes,
now.
that's the acronym.
I know you said that it was the
Yes.
slogan, but I didn't understand.
But you're
Plant
right,
It's an
Everywhere.
acronym.
Things do change. You know, say that's dope. That's cool. It's like
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I
yeah.
first heard somebody say, "You want to go back to my place and get blowed." I did not know at first they meant
Right, yeah.
with
Well,
the
I am
joint.
from the 70s, so, you know, I still say cool. I don't say dope, but, you know, to each his own.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now you do catch on pretty quickly.
You know, we have a little video. I just had the pleasure of going down to San Rafael and meeting some people who actually came up with the whole 420 concept. So
And they're dope.
I can share their story, but we have a little video that will share that story for us. Is that video ready to roll? All right, here it is. We'll be back in just a moment.
And tonight, the untold story of 420, the high holiday for marijuana users, started right here in the Bay Area. Only on 5, Mike Sugarman on the guys who started the whole thing with a secret code meant to confuse their parents.
420 is the catchphrase for all things marijuana. 420 is not police code for illegal pot. That's what many believe. You know, 1 out of 12, see the man, we have a 420 on Hippie Hill. No. 420 is Hitler's birthday, but that has nothing to do with it. No, the phrase known around the globe started here at San Rafael High in 1971 with these now decidedly grown up former stoners. They gathered today on this 420 to explain the story to KPIX-5.
It was a joke back in the early 70s for us, and we still think it's a joke.
Somebody had a map to what they thought was a pot grove. So for weeks they went looking for it. They'd meet at 4:20 in the afternoon at the Louis Pasteur statue on campus. And 420 became their code for marijuana. They needed code, especially Jeff Noel. His father was a state narcotics officer.
Of course he was aware, and he was always concerned what we were up to, and he had his inklings, he knew, but that's why code was so important.
The code spread. It helped that the group had ties to the Grateful Dead, also Maronites, and the rock band helped popularize it. It was cemented when High Times magazine documented their story in the late 90s.
We were calling each other, laughing about the different 420s that people were coming up with, so we just kind of wanted to set the record straight as to how we knew it started.
Yes, they still occasionally smoke pot, and no, they've never capitalized on it. But they look at what it's become and they can't believe it.
It's been going on for decades. At this point, it's like the baby boomers getting older. It's kind of like, they'd be asking their doctor, ask your doctor if 420 day is right for you.
And it's almost impossible for them to comprehend that it all started with their unsuccessful treasure hunt 44 years ago. In San Rafael, Mike Sugarman, KPIX-5.
The groups call themselves the Waldos because they hung out getting high near a high school wall so many years ago. They have also never lost touch.
Okay, well there it is. So you were saying you did a story on this too.
I did. I wrote about it some years ago. It's interesting. Al Olson up in Seattle went to that high school, and I
There's a
interviewed
picture
and
I
knew
made
those guys.
a couple nights ago. Well, that was on Tuesday night.
Nice.
Right in front of Phil Lesch's club, Terrapin Crossroads, which is just across the river from San Rafael High School and the infamous wall of the Waldos.
Very cool.
Anyway, so you're doing a piece now on Portland?
Yeah, I'm on a road trip right now, Portland, and I covered the really high-end, pun intended, 420 wedding on the Oregon coast the other day. For 420.
Was it a pot wedding, you mean? Like they had marijuana cake?
It was cannabis only. Both bride and groom were third generation North Coast farmers from families, and so all their family are involved in cannabis. So that was part of their ceremony. It was part of their reception. It was part of the dinner. The cake was infused. Everything was micro-infused. The dress, one of the dresses was made of hemp.
Wow.
It was just really beautiful. It was beautifully done.
So you're going to Detroit next week?
Yeah, Detroit next week. They're having a big expo. And then end of July, and I'm excited about Detroit because there's more than 200 dispensaries there. So
I started working in Detroit in 2008, and we've literally helped about 20,000 Michigan people from Marquette and Sault Ste. Marie to Kalamazoo and Detroit.
Hosting me, Steve Green.
Oh, all right.
Hosting me, yeah. I'm excited. They're
You're
having
going
a
to
big
go
expo.
into Flint and pick up on the water story?
I'm not going to Flint. I'm going to Lansing and Detroit.
Okay.
It's from petroleum to pot is going to be my feature story.
Well, you certainly get a chance to see the third world conditions in some of that state.
Yes, but a lot of those empty buildings are now being brought back by grow operations and ancillary companies, and with more than 200 dispensaries in Detroit alone, it's a
Because they were suggesting that about 5 years ago, and Michigan
It's
turned their back
happening.
on it.
Well,
It's
they've
happening.
opened them,
Good.
and then they busted them, and they all
Yeah.
closed, and they reopened,
Lansing's
and they
been-
changed the law, and they
Lansing-
busted them again.
Lansing's been, I think, iffier than Detroit, but I'll see. I'll have a full report
I
when
testified in about 10 different courtrooms in Michigan on
Wow.
medical marijuana issues
Wow.
for our patients. But I'll tell you, the state that I testified the most, it's a little better now, was Washington State.
I get back. Yes.
Must have testified in 50 different cases
Oh my
in
gosh.
Washington State.
Wow. Yeah.
But
Those were
it's
the
still
days.
problematic in
Yeah.
Washington
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the weird law there. You know, as long as you have more than 40 grams in Washington, you don't have a medical license, you're still a felon
I know.
in Washington.
I know. We still have issues.
It's not exact. I call it kind of regulated decriminalization.
I say legalize to litigate.
Well, you know, it's 2 steps forward, 1 back, I
Yes.
think, in this case.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we are getting ready for a big global marijuana march. It's coming up on, I think it's May 7th this year. May 7th, we're going to have it here in Portland at Pioneer Courthouse Square. I think they start in a park in Seattle, but it's in over 200 different cities all around America. We have a couple videos that we're going to share about the Global March, and here's the first one featuring our friend and associate, Eric Luella. Here's the video.
Again. So let me start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I have muscular dystrophy. I was diagnosed at the age of 3, in my first electric chair by the age of 5. I was known as a pothead. People never understood that I needed certain things to make my days go. Well, when I learned that I wasn't a pothead, I was a medicator, I was free from the world. So, you know, we have women, children, men out there that are dying because they cannot get this plant. They cannot have free access to the meds they need. They are not able to get themselves out of bed. They are not able to maintain a family life because the government says we are wrong. You all feel we are wrong? I don't. I think we all deserve the right to be free and to take the medicine we need to help us relieve our lifestyles and pains, whether it be PTSD, tremors, stomach aches, whatever. If you know it's your medicine, you deserve the right to use it. It's just, to me, it's just really sad that people are dying and people have to fight for it. If you cannot have access to your medicine, what are you going to do? You fight, just to be told you're going to die? It's not right. You know, we have the access. We need to make it right for everybody. So I'm going to wrap it up, make it real kind of quick and simple. Medical, social, recreational, whatever it is, you all have the right to choose if you need it or not. And on that note, let's get ready for this great march.
All right. Well, Eric is our floor director here at the TV studio. When there's a video to run or a caller, I look to him to tell me most weeks when a call comes in and whatnot. So it was a real pleasure to see a smile on his face when that video. Did you know we were going to run that? All right.
And he's also a pothead.
Oh, no, he's not. He's a good guy.
He's a self-proclaimed pothead. What is wrong with all these pot smokers? Put the pipe down. Get a job, people. Oh,
What's
never
your
mind.
job?
I don't want a job. Hand me the pipe. Never mind.
Okay. We have another little video we're going to run also about the Global March. Again, the Global March takes place in over 200 cities around the world. Down in South America,
huge. In
Santiago, Chile, last year they had 450,000 people marching through the streets for marijuana legalization. In Buenos Aires, Argentina, on the other side of South America, they had about 180,000 people march in the streets for marijuana legalization. It's a global movement, folks, and here's a little song that's dedicated to the cause.
a peaceful solution called the peace revolution. And now let's take back America. There was a dream, so believe it. Now get ready to receive it, and we'll take back America. There is a war and we're in it, and I know we can win it. Let's just take back America. And when the war is over and we won it, let's remember how we done it so we don't have to do it again. There's a peaceful solution called the peace revolution. Now let's take back America. Peaceful solution called the peace revolution. Now let's take back America. There was a dream, so believe it. Now get ready to receive it, and we'll take back America. And when the war is over and we won it, let's remember how we done it so we don't have to do it again. There is a peaceful solution called the peace revolution. And now let's take back America. Now let's take back America. Now let's take back America.
Wheelchair this year to do the march.
Okay, so that march is coming up here the first weekend in May. So
bring
stay
your pipes,
tuned.
bring your bags, right?
Well, no, there's no public smoking. Actually, under the law, you can't smoke out in public. But it is a good march, and there'll be lots of vendors down there, and you can get involved in the movement. So Sharon. We've got Sharon Letts here, who's a journalist covering cannabis. Sharon, you're working on a book.
Yes, actually my next big trip this summer is Costa Rica, the end of July, where I will give a little presentation. A popular essay I wrote is called A Day in the Life of an Educated Stoner. And because I'm from the 70s, I always considered myself a stoner. But then when I made the cancer go away with the oil and prescription meds go away, and I'm pushing 60 now and I feel very healthy. So now I feel like I'm an educated stoner, and I have many deliveries and I infuse everything in my kitchen. So I'm working on a book called Educated Stoner, where I teach people day to day how to use the plant in different ways, you know, smoking, topical, ingesting, and different things to do.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to that coming out. Do you have a planned date, or is it just in the concept?
No, I'm going to start giving the presentation this year, and I'm still working on the book, and Lord knows when that will be finished with all my traveling lately, but I'm working on it.
All right. We have another phone caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Greetings, fellow Earthlings. There's two very important points that I need to make very clear to you people tonight.
All right.
Number one is all of the audio that comes from Portland Community Media sounds like the microphone diaphragms are cracked or broken or partially in disrepair.
All right.
And so therefore I have to turn the volume up all the way. The only way I can hear you guys is to use my small TV, which has a headphone jack on it, and then turn the volume up all the way. But it's basically what I have is a distorted audio path, which is it's a weak path, a weak signal to begin with.
So this is something that you've had problems with before, right?
Turn it up. What?
This is something you've had problems with before, right?
Not just me. It's anybody.
Oh, I know. I think it's
here's the
everybody
deal.
out
if
there.
If I watch conversations with Dr. Don on the CAN, the Community Access Network, which is Channel 11, okay,
Right.
he produces his show out of PBC TV, and his audio, it's just fine. It's not the greatest, but it's about 98% better than what you guys have. So
Well, you know, I
somebody
think
down there, and this hasn't always been the case. Let me finish this up real quickly, please. This hasn't always been the case because I've been watching Cannabis Common Sense since about the first or second year you guys have been on the air. And I tell everybody I know to tune in on Friday nights at 8 p.m. But the point of it is, in the last couple of years, somehow or another, there's somebody that's in there at Portland Community Media that's sabotaging things. And this wouldn't be tinfoil hat type of stuff I'm talking about, because I watch quite a bit of C-SPAN, and I've noticed that most of the Republicans and some of the Democrats want to do away with.
You know what? We're down to just 2.5 minutes left in the show.
They want to do away with local.
So, unfortunately, we're out of time right now. I'm sorry about the audio problem. We have tried to isolate that out. We've heard about that in the past. We will keep working on it. We do record the show here internally, and then we put it out on the internet. And you can watch it on Ustream, I think, without those audio problems. I don't think it's true throughout the CAN network. I think it's just a certain area that you're in. Probably people in that, who can say? Anyway, we're about out of time. Casper, you want to give a plug for your website?
I would love to. Please make it a point to go to timeforhemp.com. Check out all the amazing content put together by the fantastic hosts that are dedicated to ending prohibition all around the world. You can also download free MP3s, lots of great editorial cartoons, and you can watch us grow marijuana live every day by tuning into our site and checking out the cameras and see our plants grow right before your eyes. And don't forget, Time for Hemp is like a great joint. It's always best when you share it with your friends. Thank you for the plug.
Sharon, where would people go to find your information on the internet?
Well, dopemagazine.com, and my Portland road trip will be in the June issue this year.
All right. Well, we have doctors who help patients get medical marijuana permits all across America. If you need help with that, you can call us toll free at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. Or you can call us locally at 503-281-5100. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's been a great show. Thank you, Sharon. I really appreciate you coming on. Good to see you, Mr. Casper. Good to see you. We're going out on another great song by John Cornette. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. Huh!
There's a train coming, and it's already on the track. People changing, and for some there's no turning back. Cannabis is more than just a weed.